on something subjective. Consider a phase transition, the unsettled zone a system passes through between one stable form and another, where it sits fragile and the smallest change decides what form it takes. Water at a boil, the line between liquid and vapour. Holding that shape, let the medium be something other than heat or matter. Let it be ambiguity, how open the next moment is. In a space like that, not necessarily a physical one, there can be a threshold of the same kind, a region poised between what is settled and what is still open. That is where I want to look for mind. I'm offering this as a direction, a flashlight rather than a finished map, but I'll state it plainly, without hedging, so the idea can be explored with some breadth. I tend to try to understand a system, or some feature of reality, by asking what it does. X is when the universe does what, or X is a system that does what. I've put that to economics and to language, which I've explored in other writings of mine, if you'd like to look. Rather than describe what a thing is made of, it's often more telling to describe what it does. So, the mind is when the universe does what. Picture the space of that ambiguity, and how the openness varies from place to place across it. Some regions are tightly settled, the rock falls, the heat spreads, the cup breaks, and not much about what comes next is really in question. Though even there, look closely enough and something stays unfixed. In other regions the constraint is looser, and more of the next moment stays live. The openness isn't spread evenly, it runs in a kind of webbing, gathering into pockets in some places, and thinning toward the settled and certain in others. And what the open thing even is, depends on the scale you look at. Down at the bottom of physics, it's something like where a particle will be found. While at our scale, it's whether I'll eat the hamburger or not. Different altitudes, different ambiguities. Maybe mind, and I presume life, is just where such a pocket holds itself open, where the openness, once it appears, keeps reproducing its own pattern and persists, the way a glider in the game of life stays itself even as the cells it's made of change. These pockets of openness seem able to carry themselves forward, and to open further pockets as they go. Maybe that propagation is the whole of it, needing only some first scrap of fuzziness to start. What matters here is an absence. It's the lack of certainty, the not yet fixed, that does the work and serves as the medium. If the universe is at bottom information, this is a question about the other face of that. Not the information present, but the uncertainty that hasn't been removed. Think of sand on a vibrated plate. As it sounds, the grains condense into a pattern. Organic wiggles and wavy structures, lattice arrangements, whatever the resonance happens to draw out. It lives in the relation between where the sand is and where it isn't. Something like that may be possible in the ambiguity field. Not sand, but the openness itself taking on a standing form, a webbing with its own pockets and islands, maybe a single connected structure threaded through the space. There's no reason to confine it to 3 dimensions. The space has as many as there are kinds of openness. The pattern, the standing form across the ambiguity field, is what I'm proposing mind is. A Chladni-like figure, raised in ambiguity rather than sand, an intricate resonant form at one scale or abstraction of openness. I'm proposing the mind is that Chladni form. However, I do stay open to whether it's instead some feature internal to the pattern, the form being a habitat. Regardless, I suggest mind lives as or within ambiguity. Assuming mind is the form, the mind at any scale is the ambiguity native to that scale. A cell's openness is whatever it decides among, an ion channel opening or closing, a gradient followed or not. Ours is sensitive to things like sitting or standing, swallowing a comment or speaking your mind. The same structure at every altitude, and whatever holds the relevant kind of openness, at whatever scale, could carry something mind-like, a flame, a market, the weather, each possibly a pattern resolving an openness of its own. If this is right, making a mind looks less like assembling parts, until awareness switches on, and more like shaping a condition that loosens a patch of reality, that makes some spot of the universe a little less certain than its surroundings. Engineering structures of uncertainty might then be a kind of technology or a kind of physics. Draw an uncertainty wall around a bubble of space and ask what happens inside it. And there may be no separate instrument for making minds. Whatever could open a structured pocket of uncertainty in reality would, in the same act, be making one. The craft of uncertainty and the craft of mind would be a single craft. The mind isn't only a pattern standing in the ambiguity, it's the mechanism by which the universe resolves that ambiguity, the way an open set of continuations closes into one decided outcome. It has to live in the openness, because the openness is where the resolving happens, and resolving is what it does. In the regions of reality still left open, the mind is how one continuation gets chosen over the rest. It is the universe's way of choosing a path through what's still open. Whatever does the resolving inside that pocket is the thing I find myself reaching for when I look into someone's eyes. There's a place it seems to go down to, back behind the face, a centre where it all comes to a point, and part of why it's so intimate to meet someone's eyes may be that you're looking straight at the site where their openness is being pressed into one continuation, and that it seems to fall away inward, a hole that keeps going. What is that resolving, made concrete? Picture a knife laid against a stretched fabric and pressed. For a while the fabric only dimples, taking the shape of the edge, then it gives, and a split runs through it. A delineation, a line with one side and another, a separation where a moment ago there was continuous cloth. In the ambiguity field, the cloth is the set of live continuations, and the split is a decision. This side stays, that side falls out of contention. That is a gain in certainty, a whole region of possible necks removed from the run-in, which is just what information is, uncertainty reduced, and the act leaves a mark. The delineation is a crease pressed into the substrate, a fold that wasn't there before and now is, dividing whatever it runs through. A single straight cut is only the simplest version. The pattern you are doesn't press one edge into the field, it presses its whole intricate outline, stamping a contour the way a cookie cutter takes not half the dough, but a shape, a star, a rabbit, whatever its own Chladni form is. What gets carved out is set by the shape doing the carving. A protein works this way, its fold is its function, and a different fold opens different reactions. The pattern type you are is like that fold. It decides which continuations are within reach, your reachable set, and a differently shaped pattern would stamp a different one, with doorways yours doesn't have. This also gives a way to talk about the self. If every moment is another delineation pressed into the field, then what you are is the running trace of those cuts, the line of creases you've left, the lineage of every split that kept this side and let the others go. Not a thing carried along underneath, but the path itself, the thread of delineations that leads to here. A mind never faces all of possibility, only its reachable set, everything it could get to from where it stands. But it can't jump anywhere in that set at will. It moves through what's immediately adjacent, a step at a time. The branch where the meal is already eaten is reachable, but not in one move. I have to stand, cross the room, pick the thing up, bite, chew, swallow. And each step resets which options lie next. The edges of that next step aren't sharp either. When the cut comes, the options it passes over don't vanish so much as fade, like diffusion run backward, dissipating rather than being struck off. And the spread is graded throughout, some continuations vivid and near, others already half dissolved. If the mind is the thing that cuts, it lives along the boundary between the cut and the uncut, between what has already been settled and what is still open. That boundary is the present. Behind it is the past, everything already decided. Ahead is the future, everything still joined. The now is the cut in itself, the moving surface where one continuation gets settled out of the rest. It isn't a widthless instant. A real cut has some thickness, which may be why the present feels like a small extended band, where things are still being decided rather than a point. and it isn't the same for every mind, because the cut is shaped by the cutter. The present a mind lives in is its own openness, being settled into history through its own form. In a past piece of writing, I proposed a continuation to Descartes' cogito ergo sum, ergo est nunc, therefore it is now. A point of view can't be nowhere in time. To experience at all is to experience from a present. So the now arrives as certain as the I. This reaches the same place from the other side. If mind is the resolving of open continuation into a single line, then mind has to be at the present, because the present is where the resolving happens. The now isn't the time the mind occupies, it's the surface the mind is. Which brings it back to where it started. The mind, the self, sits at a threshold, the in-between fuzzy, not yet settled region, where the universe can still tip more than one way. It is the operator on that region, the thing that meets the open field and presses it down one slope rather than another. That is where will would live, if there is will. Not a force shoving matter around, but command over which way an already poised thing falls. Whether that command is real or only feels real, whether the mind leans the outcome or only experiences where it was always going to fall, is the thing I can't settle, nor whether the mind is the part that aims, the part that severs, or one thing that aims and severs and aims again, the way an enzyme works its way along a strand. I'll leave those open. They sit beside the frame rather than deciding it. So that's the direction. Mind as what a piece of the universe is doing wherever it holds an area open and presses it, through the shape it has, into one continuation rather than another. I'm not offering it as settled. I'm offering it because it keeps fitting, because it lines up in too many separate places with how the thing feels from the inside. Look for mind where ambiguity has structure, and where a pattern holds at the edge of what is still becoming.